Good morning. My name is Jason Coyle. I am one of the operations section chiefs for Southwest Area Team 1. We are commanding the central zone of the Hermit's Peak Calf Canyon incident. Today is May 16th, and this is your operational update. Last night on the 209, on the form we used to report our progress up to lots of people. We showed 27% contained. I just wanted to touch quickly on what containment is. So for every percent containment we go up, that means that portion of the entire fire perimeter is that we do not expect fire to cross it even under the most severe conditions. So if it's 100 miles of fire line, which we have a lot more than that, but if it is 100 miles of fire line, then going up 1% in containment would mean that 1 mile of fire line we didn't expect fire to get across it. And so to do that, there's multiple steps. So the first thing is that you have to scout the line location and make sure that you put it in the most favorable spot to be successful. Then you have to create that line either with hand tools or with bulldozers. And then you have to remove the fuels adjacent to that line so the line can be effective, and that takes a different amount of time depending on what the fuel is. Grass, super quick. Heavy mixed conifer timber like we have here, not quick at all. And then the next thing you have to do in most cases is you have to burn off of that line back towards the main fire. You need to do that because the fire spots a certain distance under unfavorable conditions, and here up to 2 miles. So you need to make sure that fire, any fire that we put along our dozer lines or whatever, is backed away from that by a satisfactory distance before the main fire hits it. And then you have to mop it up, we call it, but you have to put out all of the heat that's adjacent to the line. When all that's done, we gain a percent of containment on that 1 mile example I gave you. So percent containment does not mean percent effort. There's 100% effort going in to containing this fire right now. Those containment numbers are not representative of that effort until each mile is completed. All right, so the fire is currently, last night on our infrared flight, it was 297,943 acres. There's 2,015 people assigned to the incident. So we're going to start on the west side of the fire, and we are not going to go to the map today. I'm going to talk about things based on names. There's a couple reasons for that. First off is that the map doesn't have adequate detail. We're working to correct that issue in our new location, get a big enough space to be able to put a much larger map on there. And the second thing is that some people have been listening to these, and these have been rebroadcast. So we want to do the best we can to give you the information. If I point on the left side of the map with my big hand, it's not going to give you the details. So I'm going to try to go down by the values, by the communities, and invite you to put your comments in there about things we didn't address, and we'll make sure and pick them up next time. So yesterday, most of the fire growth we saw was south of the 581 road, and the fire grew to the west under an east wind about a little over 3 miles. So right now, the main fire's edge is just south and west of what's called the Knob, and it is still south of the 581 road in that area. What that growth to the west and what the anticipated weather last night caused us to do was to recommend additional evacuations. I bet you go to the evacuation map. I'm sure the PIOs can put a link to that here to make sure that you check that for the most up-to-date information. I hate for somebody to watch this later and me be wrong on what those conditions were. So as that fire began to move west, we continued our structure prep. We're working in Angostura and Tres Ritos, and we're moving to the west and looking at Sipapu and Las Mochas. So we like to be 3 bad days ahead with all that kind of work. And that doesn't mean like 3 calendar days, but 3 days when there's large fire growth. So, as we start to look further west, the implication shouldn't be that means that my home is going to be impacted by fire. It should just mean that we're making sure that we're trying to stay ahead of we're making sure we're trying to. we are doing our best to stay ahead of the fire to ensure that the prep work is done prior to fire impacting it. So that fire growth to the west, it is north of the Jicarita Peak, and there's a ridge that runs down from Jicarita Peak to the south towards Chemayosis, and then west to Truchas. That ridge doesn't have a lot of fuel on top of it, high above 10,000 feet. There's no timber up there. And so we're watching that fire growth to the west. And one of the priorities for aircraft is going to be if there's grass or anything else that may carry it across some areas along that ridge system that I just described, that we suppress that fire. There's a couple reasons why we want to make sure that's done. Number one is we don't want any of our fire moving further west towards Trampas. And the other thing is that as activity increases on the southern end of the fire, like it did yesterday, and there is an increased potential of that fire that on the southern end moving west and then coming back up north, we want to make sure that we have a buffer between the values, the communities along that 581 corridor and that southern fire. So, as I stated before, the fire is still south of 581. It would be amazing if fire was not able to cross the 581 anytime in the next week to the north. And we will continue to work to do that. At the same time, we're planning for that not to occur, for us to be unsuccessful in that, based on the weather and what's occurred over the last, I don't know how many days, 30 days. So all the way north to Highway 64, continuing to look at ridge systems that go between the 518 road and Angel Fire, Angel Fire, Black Lake area. Find the best place to prevent that fire from continuing to move north across the 64 road. I anticipate that by tomorrow I should be able to tell you where we're doing line construction. The thing is it's incredibly important that we make sure that we pick the right location and that location that we have adequate time to complete the work, and it's the one that's the most favorable for stopping the fire. There's a strong enticement for us to get in closer and try to minimize the acreage and minimize the impact to all the campsites, the watersheds, everything else that is between here and the 64 road. And we'll certainly do that if we have the opportunity. However, on that side of the fire, especially with the prevailing winds and everything we've seen so far, if we choose an in-close option and we fail and we don't have enough time to execute a further out option, far worse outcome than if we chose that further out option initially. So that's a lot of the balancing act that's going on right now on the west hand side, on the west side there. All right, near Chacon, on the west side of the 121 there, going up on the ridge system that is just south of where the Luna fire burned. Some fire activity there yesterday on the west side, so moving out to the west. And right now we have aircraft up looking at that, seeing if they can do something to assist with slowing that fire growth down. Because once again, that's another one of those places where if it gets further west, then it can go around the Luna fire to the northeast and then into Black Lake. The work around the northeasterly side of the fire in that area has been really successful. So crews have been in there with dozers and putting hand line in, and all around Chacon on that west side, everything's looking good. All the way down the 121 corridor there towards Cleveland. On the east side, I told you last night that we intended to do some burning, and we did. And so from Chacon south, about a third of the way through the area where the fire is further off of the road on the east side. So we used unmanned aerial aircraft last night to introduce fire up on those ridges and back it back down. And that was looking really good. We got it all the way down to the road, and it's still within our dozer lines. And we want to continue that work as conditions allow. So we can get it all the way down to the road. We get it all the way south. I shouldn't say to the road. That's just relative to the road and the dozer lines, behind people's homes and everything like that in that area. So it's still, the intent is still to keep the fire from impacting any of the improvements of people's homes, structures that are out there, fence systems and stuff like that. But if we don't get it down to the road and we get some of the winds that we've seen before, it risks spotting into Chacon, and then the stringers of timber that exist on the east side of the 121 north of Chacon, and that'll push it right up, continuing up to go to the north towards Sierra Bonita. So that work's ongoing, and they're continuing to mop up and hold that area. We also want to get that secured so we can get you guys back in your home in those areas. So until we get that fire secured, we have to commit resources there, and we got to keep you out of the home, out of the houses. As soon as we get it secured, we can make a recommendation to law enforcement that they repopulate the area, and we can take those resources and shift them around and concentrate force in other areas to put the fire out. All right, so if you go from Chacon to the east towards Guadalupita, then I told you yesterday we invested a significant effort in getting a retardant line put in from Guadalupita to the west into the Luna Fire. So far that line's holding. They got that line all the way in place yesterday, and the crews are continuing to go direct. So right along the fire's edge from Guadalupita west towards Chacon. We're actually going to insert more crews today via helicopter on the very tip of that so they can work back down from both directions. And then we have identified some areas of heat to the west of where they were working yesterday. So still, it'd be on the east side of Chacon, but west of what you'd see is the highest point of the fire on the map. And so we're going to look to use aircraft to cool those pieces of heat down and get dozers in where the conditions favorable for dozers, and then be able to work around that tip. That right there, if we can get that piece buttoned in, we can get the fire on the east side of the road of the 121 between Chacon and Cleveland, back it down towards the road, and then we can prevent that fire that's on the west side of the road from moving south of the Luna Fire and then up to the northeast. Then that will allow us to significantly reduce the threat towards the Hidden Lakes area, Sierra Bonita, and areas further to the northeast there. So along with that, the work to the northeast, or as long as that potential still existing in fire growth to the northeast, that there's continuing work to identify what the level of commit would need to be, what the amount of resources would need to be to do work along that 121 Hidden Lakes and then further north, and scouting those line locations that would tie the Cooks Peak fire into our fire line on the north side, still keeping it south of that power line corridor that provides power to Taos and also to Angel Fire. All right, so further south along the 121 road behind Chacon, with fires down to the dozer line behind Chacon. So we got to spend some time making sure that fire is extinguished for all the reasons I talked about at the very beginning of this presentation. But that is looking really good. We're glad to see that fire down to our dozer lines. That lessens the likelihood that under unfavorable winds that it will spot across that line. In the next couple of days, as that work as we're able to extinguish the heat that's next to our dozer line, it will significantly lessen the likelihood that Mora is impacted, that fire moves east of the 121 in that corridor that goes between Mora and Guadalupita. All right, so the plan for today is to continue the work on the north side of the fire there between Chacon and Guadalupita, continue structure, patrol, mopping up fires next to structure in all of the communities, and then of course the area, the homes that are between the communities, from Chacon all the way down to Mora, and then back up to Guadalupita, any place where the fire is near it, and then continue the work to prepare homes on the 581 road going to the west from Angostura and the communities further west. Look for opportunities to reduce the western fire spread along 581 and use that with aircraft and getting crews in there. Continue to work on the lines along the northern portions of the fire that aren't tied in yet. Look at ways to take the Luna Fire scar and tie it back into the south and see if we can keep that fire from growing to the north there. And we're going to be doing all that in a manner that's considerate of the weather that we have that's anticipated for today. So they upgraded us to a severe thunderstorm warning, which unfortunately doesn't mean much for putting the fire out. What it does mean, though, is that higher thunderstorms go, thunderstorms that are capable of producing hail, they negatively impact our aircraft from the hail. The winds associated with those can push the fire in multiple different directions. So this is one of those days where we need to balance the effort to make improvements on areas of the fire that we see right now as a threat with the potential threat that exists from outflow thunderstorms to create a bigger problem somewhere else. And what that means is that there'll be resources in every one of the divisions, each one of the segments around the fire that are committed deep in on doing work. And there's also going to be ones that are going to be committed to doing work that they can immediately extract themselves from so that they can go and address any emerging threats and so that we have the force necessary to deal with those threats in the best way possible. Today's going to be a complex day. There's going to be a lot of complex days ahead. But for the reasons I just stated about the weather, some of the challenges that we're facing today are a little bit different than the challenges we anticipate with the wind events occurring in the next few days. So just want to make you guys aware of that. All right, I believe that's the end of the operational report, and I thank you for your time.